Oh, hello.
Hello there, who are you?
I'm Veronica.
Hello, Veronica. Welcome to the Science Shed.
Oh, thank you. Can I come in here?
Yeah.
This is a shed.
Yeah, please come in and sit down. The Science
You're
Shed
a
is...
fantastic example of the male specimen, aren't you?
Well, that's very kind of you to say,
Oh,
Veronica.
my goodness.
Well, come in, sit down. Let me tell you a little bit about the Science Shed.
Oh, I can't wait.
So the Science Shed is
What are you going to tell me today?
Well, the Science Shed is a science podcast that comes out every 2 weeks with two university academics. My name's Stephen Lee. I'm a chemist from the University of Cambridge, and my colleague here, that you'll probably like even more than me, that is a fine specimen of a man, Nick Evans. He's a bioengineer.
Oh, well, I hope you boys don't go too far, because I can lose control at moments of extreme excitement, especially of the scientific variety.
Well, we'll try not to excite you too much, Veronica.
That might be a challenge. I get excited rather easily.
Science Shed! We're in the Science Shed! Science Shed! We're in the Science Shed! Come on, Steve.
Bunsen,
Burner!
solid,
Machine!
internal.
Combustion!
Why do we need
Steam!
Petri,
Dishes!
Oscar,
Space!
Isaac,
Newton!
transplanting?
Science!
Nick,
Steve,
you know what? I've got some bad news for you.
are you shaving your beard off?
No, that would be amazing news for you. You'd love that.
I love your beard.
Thanks. So we entered ourselves into the British Podcasting Awards.
We
didn't
did!
They've just announced the nominations.
Oh, we're not nominated.
We're not nominated.
Well, there's quite a lot of very popular podcasts.
Very much so. But do you want to know who our competition are? Because I know
Yeah,
who
go
were.
on.
Right. So we entered in the smartest category,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
essentially kind of factual. So we're up against everyone. So there's a podcast called Chips with Everything, which is on iTunes, which is on The Guardian. The Guardian puts that out.
Okay.
Right? Which
They've
is
got some fairly good backing.
which is to do with kind of media, social media, and kind of
Right.
anthropology, basically.
Right.
So it wasn't really a direct
Is it
competitor
called
for
Chips
us.
with Everything?
Chips with everything. There's another one called Coffee Break Italian, which
Uh-huh.
obviously we can't really compete with that. That's not really Italian. I mean, we don't really do
Coffee
languages.
Break Italian?
Yeah, there's another one called the National Trust Gardens podcast.
Oh,
Again, they've
God.
got like big, like
Well, people like that, man. I mean, Gardener's Question Time on a Sunday, I actually don't mind that so much either. So that's got a massive.
Okay, so you don't mind losing to that.
No.
Sound Matters, which is like a audio podcast about like audio nerds talking about like hi-fi and stuff.
Sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, and then there's one science one.
Which is that?
It's not us.
Who is it?
It's one called Science-ish
Oh,
by a gentleman what's the guy's name? Radio Wolfgang, apparently, by Dr. Michael Brooks. So they beat us for the
well,
so the nomination.
I have to immediately go out and listen to that.
I think. Well, no, we should encourage people not to do that. They should be listening to the Science Shed,
They should be.
and then maybe we'll win next time.
But maybe his
Someone at the door.
podcast is really good. I don't know who those people
Okay.
are.
I don't. Someone's just waving.
Oh,
at us.
it's Tracy. I know who she is. That's,
All right. Yeah. So I'm
I
afraid.
co-supervise her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Should we get Tracy in? Say hello. That was Tracy. Your PhD student's here. What's she doing here?
She works here.
Oh, so
I
she's joined-
co-supervise
Oh,
her,
you
yeah. So
co-supervise,
Eileen,
yeah.
I co-supervise one with Eileen, who works here, and
Right.
Eileen co-supervises one of my students in
Yeah.
Southampton.
Wow, that's
So
cool.
we've got a little bit of an exchange thing going on.
Right. Okay. Well,
good.
why didn't we have a co-student?
Well, you've never helped.
Neither of you.
Why
We're
would-
about to submit a
But
paper, though.
why don't we submit a grant, Steve?
Let's do that. How could we?
I've got an idea.
We've just
I
about
don't want to
submit-
share it on the podcast.
Do you know what?
It's a
Like
good
we were
idea.
talking about submitting the 6-year paper, the 7-year paper.
Oh
now.
my God! It's almost ready to go,
In
Steve.
podcast 2, we spoke about that. We're now on podcast 20x something, 20 something now.
Yeah, but as a percentage of the total time, it's probably like 5% of the
But
total time.
we're so close with the 7-year
Well,
turd,
it just needs
aren't
to
we?
be. It just needs to be submitted.
Yeah.
I'll do it on Sunday.
So
I tried to get Agnieszka to do it, but she's given me a whole load of excuses.
Right. Yeah. Well, I tried to palm it off
Good
on you, didn't I?
excuses. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's do that.
Yeah, but I
Submit
know
the
that I'm going to
paper.
have to go on the website, start a
Click
new
a
profile.
button,
I'm going to have to fill in like
forget
10
my
authors,
password, yeah.
find out where they are, fill out their bloody affiliations.
Yeah. No, they're all on. It's all on the paper. You can just add it on the paper.
Oh, you make it sound so straightforward.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do it either.
Filling out the boxes.
Yeah. So we'll
Why don't
submit.
you get Anna to do it?
We could get Anna to do it. Yeah. Like Anna, if you listen to this in the future, if you submitted our paper, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna.
If you haven't, then why didn't you submit the paper? Anyway, so we should after we submit our paper and we've proven to the scientific community what a dynamic team Dr. Evans and Dr. Lee are, we should write a grant to do more.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
All right, I'm well up for
I've
that.
got a really good idea.
And then maybe
as
one of
well,
our
Steve.
students could
I've
come
got a
in.
good idea which is relevant to both of our things.
Okay, well, let's talk about
I
that.
saw a recent paper actually in Biophys J, which sort
Really?
of sparked my imagination.
Excellent.
I'm not sharing it though because the listeners may steal our ideas and do it in the garage and publish first.
Yeah, well, if it takes us 7 years to publish one paper, they probably will.
Oh, I've just spat on them.
Can't take him anywhere.
Sorry, I've spat on the pop mic. Don't worry. All right, Steve. Fluorescence.
Again,
You know,
I
I
freaking
wanted to.
love fluorescence.
Well, we're back at Guy's, right?
Yeah,
and
we
I want
are.
to tell you a little life story about me.
about fluorescence.
My life story, my professional life story.
Sorry, could we get a jingle for this?
Nick's life story. We could try. Nick's life story. Anyway,
Life story.
so you work on fluorescence, Steve, and you
I
did
do.
a late thing at the Science Museum recently, which was sort of a public engagement thing. So
Yeah.
you're telling people about the basics of fluorescence.
I did, yeah.
And it took me back, and now we're at Guy's. It's taken me back even further because my PhD was on fluorescence spectroscopy, as you
Good.
probably know.
I do. We've spoken about this before.
Exactly. So, yeah, it was a long time ago, and
Yeah.
I've moved on to past is new. But I wanted to sort of bring it back up again and ask your advice on the idea of glucose sensing.
Glucose sensors. Okay. Well, that's
Yeah,
what you did
so
your PhD
PhD
in,
was
right?
on glucose sensing in diabetes.
So what does that mean? Why is that
So
important?
people know about people with diabetes.
Yeah.
They struggle to control their blood sugar because they don't have insulin. So type 1 diabetic people don't make insulin. Type 2 diabetic people do, but the body doesn't respond properly to it. So their blood sugar goes out of control. So people with diabetes have to control.
And why is that
how much
bad? Why does it
sugar in
matter if there's too much
So
sugar?
sugar's toxic.
What does that mean?
Sugar is poisonous.
But why is sugar? That doesn't make sense, Nick.
Sugar is poisonous, right?
So,
So our bodies...
but not in a kind of hippie. Sugar is poison, man.
sugar's bad,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. You should be eating vegan quinoa.
Sugar is poisonous at high concentrations in the bloodstream. So our body keeps it between a window of concentrations.
Right.
Okay, so it's...
I mean, that's true with everything. There's some toxicity associated with a lot of things. So if you eat enough of it,
Yeah.
it can become toxic. So it
So
kind of
it's
makes
generally-
sense that sugar might be if you eat too much.
But it's generally kept at sort of 5 milligrams to 25 milligrams per litre, I think. Something in that range. So...
So when you have a Coke and you have a big spike or
yeah,
whatever
but
of sugar,
it never normally goes above about... well, okay, let's talk in millimoles, so that's with scientists.
Thank you.
I'm not going to explain what a mole is, but they're just numbers.
Yeah.
But our body usually is between about 3 and 10,
okay,
right? 3 to 4 is normal. 10 is really, really high.
yeah,
Okay, people with diabetes, it goes up to 25, 30, 40.
wow, okay,
Okay, that's called hyperglycemia.
yeah,
That's toxic because the sugar is reactive and it reacts with things in your blood vessel walls and other
Right.
cells, and it damages them. It causes called oxidative damage.
okay,
So your tissues die, and usually what the first thing to get damaged is your small blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
So people who have hyperglycemia all the time, they develop kidney problems. Where you've
'Cause there's
got
lots of blood vessels.
Tiny little blood vessels in your kidney,
Yeah.
susceptible to the toxic effects first. The backs of your eyes and your retina,
right.
that diabetic people, if they have...
They can lose their sight, can't they?
sight. And then they get general microvascular disease, especially in the peripheries of their toes and feet and things.
Yeah, it's very common for
So you get
people.
ulcers.
Right,
And it leads to amputation. So the most common
Yeah.
cause of amputations is vascular disease due to diabetes.
absolutely. I read a really interesting stat about that. So they were talking about because it was basically on the dangers of sugar, and saying so the entire number of amputees that came back from the war in Iraq total, it's about 300, right? Like 300 to 500, depends on how you classify it, right?
Yeah.
Last year on the NHS, 5,000 amputations caused by diabetes.
Yeah.
It's nuts, isn't it?
It's,
Right?
it's a huge number,
Yeah.
and it's type 2. You have to distinguish type 1. Numbers are fairly constant.
Yeah.
Type 2 is increasing because it's obesity causes it generally. So type 2 is a different disease, but they both result in too much sugar in your blood, basically. So the same downstream kinds of effects like you have in your legs having to have your
It's
legs
different
up.
cause, but the same
Anyway,
effects.
so if you control your blood sugar properly, then you don't have these effects. But diabetic people have to take blood to do that. Generally speaking, they prick their fingers. You may, if you know,
you mean when they take blood, you mean you have to kind of check how much sugar's in your blood by putting
4
blood on
times
a
a day
machine.
or more, and it tells you how much it is, and that tells you how much insulin to take.
Right.
If you're dependent on insulin.
Sure.
So you have to control your blood sugar within a given range. All right, and if you control your blood sugar well, it's established that you won't develop the complications. It's only in people who don't that you get these nasty things happening.
Can you regenerate those vasculature problems? So say, for instance, you recognise you've got the disease and you start taking insulin or regulating your insulin. Do you get better, or is the damage done?
Oh no, you can live quite healthily with diabetes.
But say you had diabetes and you lost your sight. If you started changing your medication or taking more or less insulin, would your sight come back?
No.
So once it's done, it's done.
It's irreversible. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the kidney disease will lead to need for transplantation.
Right.
Because
Okay.
you go into your kidneys fail.
Okay.
It's permanent damage.
Okay. So you can't undo it.
No.
Okay,
You've got to
that's a bit
prevent
scary.
it.
Yeah.
You've got to prevent it. So that's why the problem with living with a lifestyle is that diabetes. You've got to control your blood sugar every day.
Yeah.
So you've got to check your blood sugar. It's a problem for people.
Yeah.
It affects what people do, how they live their lives. They're not free.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
To do what they want to do.
exactly.
Want to have a good time.
Yeah. Anyway, so if they could control, and generally what happens is because it's such a drag to measure your blood sugar, and because you can only do it at specific points, then you have poor blood glucose control, and that's what causes the problems. So there's been a huge drive for many years to track blood glucose continuously,
but without having to prick your finger and put blood on a machine. Yeah.
And there are now devices. So I worked in this a long time ago, like I said, and we did a thing when kids came into one of the labs last summer, and one of them had a meter on his arm.
They're cool,
so
aren't
called
they?
a
I've seen
freestyle
these.
meter.
Amazing.
So they made, I can't remember the company, probably shouldn't advertise the company, but anyway, but they stick to your arm, and they sample interstitial fluid. So they don't sample the blood. You have fluid that surrounds cells in your skin, and they take
So this
samples.
is like a bit of a bionic. So there's a constant machine that's attached to the like in your body in some level.
Yeah, and it's wireless, so you can take the information from the.
So how big is it?
It's about a coin size.
So it just looks like
for
for someone
slightly smaller than the 2p.
but they got like a thing stuck on their arm. Is what it looks
back of
like.
the arm. So stick on the back of the arm, underneath the t-shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
But it measures it's continuously sampling, so it tells you what there's a disadvantage with it. It only shows your blood sugar. There's a lag, 10 to 20 minute lag behind what's in your blood.
Okay.
So diabetic people, they suffer from hypoglycemia, which is too little blood sugar. They take too much insulin and then they flip out. They go into start behaving weirdly.
Right.
Or can go into a coma.
A bit like you are today.
A little bit. So it's really important to be able to have a warning of when that happens. So these don't work so well for that because they're lagging.
Because there's a lag,
and that can happen quite quickly. So there's constant need to improve them. So fluorescence, right?
Right.
No device has been worked out based on fluorescence, but people are trying to use it. So again, going back to your idea about fluorescence saving your life, this is another idea.
That's a
do
good
you know
idea.
what they try and do to measure your blood glucose?
With fluorescence?
Yeah.
Oh, let me think about it. So, I mean, so people have for a long time, I suppose this isn't fluorescence, but it's absorption of light. If they've looked at oxy and deoxygenated hemoglobin.
Yeah, those are the things that you might have seen on people's fingers in hospitals.
Yeah.
So they stick on the end of your finger and they tell you what your oxygen saturation of your blood is.
And what they're doing really is just a little lamp that's going through your skin.
It measures the absorbance of near infrared light.
And it's a ratiometric, I think. So it's two different wavelengths.
Absolutely.
Because oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood interact with light differently.
It's very convenient.
But that's a different phenomenon.
They tried that for blood sugar for many years, and there was a bit of a hoo-ha controversy about it.
Someone said it worked and it didn't.
Basically, yeah, people were sort of showing that there were really good correlations when in fact there weren't. It was just they'd developed a model which happened to be very good. So they sort of didn't do it post hoc.
Right.
Just did it and show it related to it, but then didn't actually test it.
Amazing. It works, yeah. Someone else will deal with the details.
Yeah. So that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Books pretty much closed on that. So
Okay.
fluorescence is what I was working on.
So the trouble with fluorescence, for I suppose, is that you have to add the fluorescent molecule.
Yeah.
So a very common one that people use is fluorescein. So if you've ever got a scratch on your eye, and they put that kind of orange dye in your eye, and it makes you look out of orange for one eye for a few hours, that's fluorescein, and that's relatively non-toxic.
Yeah.
So you're kind of limited with what dyes you can use. So I guess you've got to take the blood out, and you've got to add something that binds to the sugar, and then you've got to measure how bright it is, I suppose. Is that how it works?
Well, let me tell you about one device. So there are lots of different. These have been knocking around for a while, and very few of them have reached clinical practice. There's one that is being trialled for.
Right.
They're generally based on competitive inhibition.
Yeah.
So what happens is your glucose is floating around. You have a lump of like a material, a tube, let's say, in one of your vessels, your arteries, or your veins. The blood flows through that with the sugar in it.
Yeah.
Inside that tube, there is a molecule which will bind to glucose.
Okay. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, there's several. So boronic acid is used.
Okay.
And also there are various proteins.
Okay.
So there's glucose binding protein from the bacteria.
Yeah, yeah.
And some people have tried to use a molecule called hexokinase, which is an enzyme which binds to glucose.
Cool.
There are several of them, and there are also
So you have to
lectins, plant lectins. Do you remember we used concanavalin A?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
So there are plant proteins which will bind sugars. But what happens is with those things is you can have a competitive thing. So the molecule. So this is where you'll know more than me. But basically, you've got a molecule which binds to sugar.
Yeah.
And that's got a fluorescent dye on it.
Yeah.
And then bound to it normally is a sort of a sugar analog, something that's a bit like a sugar but isn't glucose. Let's say dextran.
Yeah.
All right. And so you've got a dye on each one. What happens is when the sugar comes along, it tells the dextran to get out of the way. So it sort of displaces it. So the dextran floats off.
Yeah.
And what happens is you get a change in the fluorescent signal because one of those dyes has got further away.
So you
from the
add
other
both of those sugars, is what you're saying?
You've got it in a self-contained tube.
So
the glucose is competitively binding to that thing.
So I mean, basically, what's happening there is we don't know where the sugar is, right? So the sugar in your body is not we can't see in the same way. It doesn't glow.
No.
So we're adding something that sticks to it.
Yeah.
And then we look at where stuff's glowing, and because we know that the glowing stuff is stuck to the sugar, we then make an inference that the sugar of the level of the sugar based upon how much it glows. So
this is based on a phenomenon called quenching or energy transfer. So basically, you shine light on the thing which is stuck on the sugar binding protein.
Yeah.
And it fluoresces. It sends out light. So you shine light of one color on it, it glows a different color. When the sugar comes along, what happens is it causes that fluorescence to increase because you've actually got another thing there.
Got it. Yeah,
another dye there which sort of absorbs it normally.
Okay.
So you're kind of unmasking.
The
sugar comes in and it unmasks the fluorescence of this one molecule. And you can measure quite precisely the blood glucose concentration. So they're being used, something similar to that, in a sensor in the artery for continuously measuring blood sugar in people who are having in intensive care.
So presumably, you basically have to top it up. It's got it's like a printer cartridge. You have to add the ink. You've got to add these two different.
You have to take it away. I mean, these are all self-contained, so there's no using up. They don't use things up.
Because I suppose what you'd want in that thing is you want something that's actively controlling your blood sugar, right? So it's measuring it, and then when it goes up, you just injects insulin, and when it goes down, you just it tells you, so eat some sugar or something.
That's been called the holy grail diabetes, because there are things which.
Because even if you have to check your blood sugar by pricking your finger, you're only doing it 4 times a day.
Well, there are insulin pumps. So your pancreas works like that. Your pancreas, the cells in your pancreas which sense sugar, and they secrete enough insulin to bring it back down to level. So it's kind of like homeostatic. We call it homeostasis. It keeps your blood sugar constant. Right. So if you lose those cells in your pancreas, like in type 1 diabetes, your blood sugar just goes out of control. It's
like a thermostat in your house, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It switches off.
It switches off when it gets cold, and it switches on when it gets cold and switches off when it gets hot.
Exactly. And in this case, what people think that they can do is, because there are insulin pumps, you can get these devices that some people use which continuously secrete insulin, infuse it into your body.
Right.
And when you have a meal, you push a button and it gives it a boost.
That's cool.
So rather than injecting with an
superhuman, Nick, or cyborgs.
So instead of that, what you'd have is you'd have that thing on your arm, which tells you what your blood sugar is, and it would control how much insulin pumps.
So basically, we can do half of the artificial pancreas. So we can waz in some insulin when you need it, but we don't know when and how much yet.
Yeah, but I think we're getting there.
That's exciting.
But fluorescence may be one of the ways you can do it more accurately than the others.
So I mean, so
you'd have so ultimately you can imagine a diabetic person would have a tattoo. So they go to a shop, they'd have a tattoo made, right, and your blood sugar changes, all right. That the sugar goes into your cells or near the dye in the tattoo. It causes the amount it glows to change. And you have a little device shining light on it, which tells you exactly how much sugar you've got in your body. Yeah, that's what I think you should do, Steve.
All right, I'll get on with it, shall I?
Wicked.
I've got something for you.
What have you got?
You know, we spoke, I think it was podcast 2 or podcast 3.
What?
We spoke about Thunderstruck.
It was number 3.
It was number 3.
It was in a really badly recorded Royal Society one in a big echoey room.
That's your fault, wasn't it? You were in charge of the recording equipment.
What?
Then I had to step in. And now we have the kind of high quality
audio.
What
did we use to record then?
We used your crappy microphone.
Did we? Oh, plugged into my computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, come on. I mean, it was early days.
Amateurs.
And we were in a really bad room.
Yeah, that's true.
I forgot about that.
We're much better now. Anyway, Thunderstruck, right? If you maybe just regale us with what that paper was about.
Oh, well, Thunderstruck was about basically making nanoparticles, mixing them up by using sound.
Right.
So got a woofer speaker and played some music to mix them up by sort of shaking them with the sound. But Thunderstruck by AC/DC was the tune which was judged to be the best.
The acoustic drive signal, I think they decided.
Very silly.
So I was having lunch yesterday with a friend of mine who actually we might get on the podcast, and he was telling me there's a bourbon, right, an American bourbon called Hudson,
right,
and if you get a bottle of Hudson bourbon, and you look at it, it says on the bottom, it says sonically matured. Right. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean, Hamish? Right. And
this is a gimmick, basically.
Do you know what they do?
They play Thunderstruck to it.
They play hip hop to it.
Oh, it's ridiculous. You imagine these stupid sort of hipsters in Brooklyn or something.
Yeah.
They've shitty whiskey that they've developed.
Yeah.
It's a bit ridiculous, really.
So they actually play different hip hop tunes. And the idea being that you have some kind of exactly the same way that it was farcical that we played Thunderstruck to make nanoparticles, but they shake it, and in doing so they suggest that imparts a flavour to the whiskey.
Do you remember what it was called?
It's called Hudson.
It's called Hudson whiskey.
Hudson whiskey.
Okay, well I won't be going out and buying a bottle of
that. I've made you sure that you will avoid it. But yeah, so I heard that, and I had exactly the same reaction as you. I said, "Isn't that ridiculous? Ha ha!" And then I just thought we've had the conversation about this on the podcast about how proper peer-reviewed scientists.
Yeah, but we were using it as an example of some stupid, it's ridiculous idea.
But it still got published, didn't it?
It was just a bit of fun. I mean, it's one thing getting Thunderstruck into a scientific paper. It's another thing for a bunch of hipsters making some cool whiskey to like bloody.
Yeah. So sonically matured whiskey.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
Listeners, what Nick's so well prepared for these podcasts that what he's doing currently is scrabbling on his laptop, desperately searching the internet to try and find something to talk to me about.
You've done this before. You remember when you just randomly went on the internet and found some story that you didn't even understand about how round the sun was?
Yeah.
It wasn't the sun, was it, either?
It was a planet, I think.
Steve.
Nick.
So you're into fluorescence, right?
I freaking love fluorescence.
And I did my PhD on fluorescence in a kind of tangential way to what I do now. So certain animals are fluorescent, all right, and you know this because you work with them. So can you name what animals or...
Well, jellyfish, famously.
Yeah, so tell
coral.
us about the jellyfish.
So the jellyfish has a protein encoded in it which fluoresces green. which won the Nobel Prize in 2008 for Roger Chen.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you kind of shine blue light on a jellyfish, they kind of glow green.
Yeah, so people would have seen these in those kind of David Attenborough things, weird things of the deep, and you get these misshapen things sort of glowing in the dark.
Well, that's a bit different. That's normally bioluminescence, right?
Yeah. I think, you know what I'm trying to...
You're lumping them all together.
I'm lumping them all together.
That's incorrect.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So bioluminescence is something different because that's a chemical reaction which
Indeed.
leads to the emission of light. So fluorescence is different in that you shine light of one colour on something, it glows a different colour.
Yeah.
Anyway...
Scorpions are fluorescent.
Well, do you know any others? Any other animals?
Corals.
Yeah,
I
corals.
suppose anything with keratin probably would be. So I don't know. Is a turtle fluorescent?
Many ocean creatures fluoresce. So there's things like corals, some fish,
Yeah.
sharks fluoresce.
No way. What
Yeah.
colour do sharks fluoresce?
I don't actually know.
Right.
But there's also a sea turtle that fluoresces as well.
So I was right. I said a tortoise. Man, I'm good.
So yeah, you're very good.
Man,
yeah.
I'm
Do you know any other animals with it fluoresce on land? You said scorpions. There's
Scorpions
another land
fluoresce.
animal.
It'd probably be. I would guess it would be some kind of insect. Am I right? No. It's a mammal.
It's not a mammal, no.
Oh, so it's a reptile or a bird.
This
Did you?
is exciting.
It's like Sherlock, isn't it?
This is exciting.
No,
So-
I don't.
So
know.
there's a species of parrot which fluoresces.
Oh, cool.
So it's not what I really wanted to talk to you. I wasn't going to talk to you about the parrot fluoresces, and people think that it uses it in its courtship rituals, basically. But there's only scorpions and parrots which fluoresce. There's lots of things in the sea that fluoresce,
Right.
as well as bioluminescence.
Yeah. Well, there's things that have bioluminescence on land too.
So
Fireflies.
they've just found a new animal which glows and which fluoresces.
Oh,
Do you know what it is? It's called a polka dot tree frog.
A frog.
A type of tree frog. I would read the Latin name, but I might screw it up. Let's try it anyway. Hypsiboas punctatus.
Right.
Okay, and it fluoresces because it's got 3 molecules that have been found in it, unknown before,
Yeah.
called hyaluron L1 and to L2.
These are
and
proteins.
They're proteins, yeah. I think. Oh, maybe they're not proteins. No, they're not proteins. So they're actually molecules. So they're organic molecules that have a ring structure.
Right.
So they may not be as useful as that in biology. But I just thought it was interesting that, there's only 2 animals on land which fluoresce. There's thousands in the sea, and they've just found a new one.
Wow.
So glow-in-the-dark frog.
That's pretty cool. I know. Well, it kind of really depends on how you define fluorescence. And most people, famously,
You're going to talk about Stokesy again?
Stokesy. Well, no, Stokesy didn't know this at the time, but basically it depends upon the time scale that you look. Most things fluoresce. It's just that some things don't fluoresce very well.
Oh, right, okay.
But I think. Well, why is it on land, and why is it imparted evolutionary so much more useful
know.
to fluoresce in the sea than it would do on land?
I don't know. It's a good question. I remember asking. So fish have these things called iridophores.
Right.
So they've got cells which make fluorescent.
So they're
molecules.
shiny.
So they shine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they're very, brightly coloured.
I guess the deeper you go in the sea, the more red light is filtered out, right? And so that would suggest that the further the UV and these kind of shorter wavelength light would penetrate deeper.
Yeah.
So one would expect that light to get deeper down in the ocean. So if you're trying to communicate with others, you probably want to make use of that UV light in some capacity.
Possibly, yeah. So these iridophores that fish have, they're not based on fluorescence, but they're generally based on sort of very brightly coloured pigments. I suppose that like mammals don't have them. I've asked this question to someone who gave a talk on this previously.
Yeah.
And his idea was that mammals sort of, they evolved for sort of hiding in the undergrowth and things like that. So it would have been a real disadvantage.
They're like a gas. That's the model.
What?
We're just having a discussion about a gas, things being spaced apart.
Right.
The ocean's really big.
Right.
And so fish and all that kind of stuff, they're spaced apart like gases. And so they find it hard to see each other. So
Do you
have
think
to have...
that's true?
I don't know. I'm just riffing there, Nick. I've got no idea.
I don't get.
I'm out of my depth.
Anyway, I didn't buy his argument about the animals. The mammals having to hide in. There's loads of birds which are hugely brightly coloured, like birds of paradise and things.
Yeah. They're not trying to hide. Yeah.
No, and mammals, you don't have iridophores and you don't have these pigment type cells that you do in birds and fish.
Right.
So I don't know. It's an open question. Be interesting if anyone's got an opinion on it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good.
TheScienceShed, we're in Come on, Steve.
Bunsen.
Burner.
Solid.
Machine.
Internal.
Combustion.
What do we need?
Stove.
Petri.
Dishes.
Austin.
Base.
Isaac.
Newton.
Transplanting.
Nick, we're done.
Oh, we're at the end of another one.
Yeah.
That was fun, wasn't it?
It was good.
Oh,
Nick, do you know what I've just bought?
I think I know what you've just bought, but tell me.
Do you really? What are you
Is
going to
it
guess?
a Telecaster guitar?
No, that's not what I was going to talk
But
about.
you have bought a Telecaster.
I have just bought a Telecaster.
What
but
else
that's
have you
not-
bought, Steve?
So I bought Google Home, which is this like a bit like Alexa, where you can talk to.
You
Google.
love having technology invade your home and your life, don't you,
So
Steve?
this one just listens to me while I sleep now. I know that would annoy you. But anyway, right, this one you can ask to play podcasts. So you can just say play podcasts. So
Really?
I asked it to play The Science Shed, of course.
Yeah.
Right? But obviously The Science Shed is one word, right?
Yeah.
So Google does not read it as The Science Shed.
Oh, we've
Do you want-
screwed up
Do you,
there.
do you want to hear how it sounds like?
Yeah, go on
I've
then.
recorded it. Okay, so here it goes. So this is me talking to Google Home. Hey Google, play The Science Shed podcast.
Here's where you stopped in TheScienceShed, episode 22's Cure Cancer.
Session sesh. That's
What?
it calls it.
Session sesh.
Listen,
TheScienceShed.
Session sesh.
That's Science Shed.
The Science Shed, but spoken phonetically.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
well, we should have
join
chosen
in-
a different name and
we
not
should
stuck
have
it all
done.
together.
We'll join in. The listeners should listen to the session sesh next week.
Absolutely.
You should contact us with social media. I'm Steve the Chemist at Twitter,
I'm at the Evans Lab.
and hopefully there'll be many more session sessions.
Great. So from the session,